What is going on, everyone? Happy New Year and welcome to the Week 18 NFL Power Rankings show. This is going to be the final Power Rankings video of this season. I do plan on doing a little bit of maybe a playoff team power ranking or something on the Fully Inflated Football podcast next week. But this time next week, you'll be seeing my playoff predictions show in place of the power rankings here on the main channel. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. And please do hit that like button as we get into it. But let's go ahead and get started. As always, at the bottom with our bottom tier, the genuinely terrible teams in the NFL. And we're going to go a little bit faster through the bottom teams here because a lot of these teams have really mailed it in. But that's really going to start with the LA Chargers, who do hold on to my number 32 spot, even though the Carolina Panthers, with the number 31 spot, forgot how to play offense again now that they didn't get to play a Joe Barry coached defense in Week 17. But then the Washington Commanders are going to join these two terrible teams at the bottom. And, you know, for the majority of the season, the Commanders could at least hang their hat on the idea of Sam Howell as a potential future quarterback. And he has really self-combusted. They weren't even planning on starting him this week because of all the turnovers and just how bad he's truly been now for a couple of months. Just has really gone downhill for him. And then don't even get me started on this defense that's a complete disaster under Ron Rivera at this point in time. So that's going to round out our bottom tier. But then our next tier is the bad but frisky teams in the NFL. And that really fits the billing on Bill Belichick's New England Patriots, who were frisky against the Bills this week. Somehow in that game, despite managing to turn the ball over 4 times in like the first 5 minutes of this football game. But yeah, I mean, I guess their defense is trying for Bill Belichick right now. That's really all I can really say. Christian Barmore's awesome. Then we got the New York Jets, who are really only ranked over the Patriots out of principle for the fact that if this team gave a shit any given week at this point, they're still really capable on the defensive side of the ball. But they're obviously looking forward to next season here. They're staying put at number 28. Then I've got the Tennessee Titans at number 27, who were hapless against the Texans. Will Levis gets hurt early in this game. Their defense has just a lot of missing pieces right now for Mike Vrabel to try to patch up this offseason. I've gotten some questions on if Vrabel should be on the hot seat. You know, I think next year if they struggle, maybe. But this was always going to be a transition year for the Titans. I'm not too worried about them, but they definitely have work to do this offseason. But then the Denver Broncos at number 26, who, you know, just from a power rankings perspective, they've turned into a pumpkin just as they were to start the season yet again. Like the mid-season Broncos that were a really tough team, you know, forget about them. This team has been slaughtered by Detroit. By the way, this is a 2-week power rankings video here, as I didn't have one last week for the holidays. But not so much the Detroit game. You know, they lost to the Patriots a week ago. They scrape by against the hapless Chargers. Like, this just is not a good football team with Jarrett Stidham at the helm. But man, I'm just not a fan of how this entire Russell Wilson situation was handled. I think it's pretty dirty that they threatened his money and all that. Like, man, why did you take the job to begin with if you were so anti-Russell Wilson? And, you know, maybe something's happened behind closed doors that just makes this unbearable for Sean Payton. But they've created a situation here. Like, I actually felt like Russ was playing okay. They were going to be able to kind of live out this Russell Wilson situation and try to build up the team kind of around Russ and then maybe eventually make a play for a quarterback. But now they're kind of entering this weird territory where I don't see how you can really go back to Russell next year and expect the relationship to work out there. It seems like they're going to have to kind of cut ties with him. And okay, so then you're sitting there with a mid-draft pick and Jarrett Stidham. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't really get why this situation had to be created by Sean Payton. It's all very messy, and it's a very bad look, in my opinion, for Sean Payton. He's going to have a lot of work to do to kind of save face on this whole thing. I think he's a very capable coach, and in time, still could get this thing right, and maybe doing this to Russ is the best decision for the team. But how does the locker room handle this in kind of a player empowerment era in the NFL? It's tough. It's again just not the best look. -12 for the Broncos over the last couple of weeks. What a fall off they've had. But then the New York Giants at number 25. I mean, hey, they've been the definition of frisky lately. They've managed some big offensive games, like games against the Eagles and Rams as of late. Tyrod Taylor providing a little bit of a spark for the offense. I think you still feel really good about Brian Daboll now that they've at least managed to get the offensive line to get in people's way a little bit, unlike the first half of the year. Still a lot of work to do, but the fact that they're losing these games is probably for the best, to be honest, to make sure they have the best capital possible to repair this entire roster. Then you got the Arizona Cardinals at number 24. Talk about being in a good spot in terms of future outlook. And how about Jonathan Gannon, man? What a day for him to go into Philadelphia and say, hey, look, that defense, that's not the same defense as it was under me there in Philadelphia. And he's doing a pretty damn good job in Arizona. It's not just that the Eagles lost Shane Steichen. Jonathan Gannon, I think he's a good coach, man. And I was dead wrong about that. I did not like that hire, didn't believe in him, but he's been really sweet for Arizona. But, I mean, they've got pieces galore. Michael Wilson big in this game. I mean, shout out Monty Austin-Fort. The new GM in Arizona, I thought, just swindled the NFL on draft day with the trade downs, and they're set up real nice in terms of draft capital. But you see like a midseason pickup with a guy like Michael Carter, who's been sweet for them. And how funny was it to see him like nervous on the sideline with them winning that game, because I think he's got his eyes set on Marvin Harrison Jr. there. Looks like the Cardinals did not lose any draft position this week, so that's a good thing. Kyler, a great game. The Cardinals have a very fun outlook for the future. It's not just fun. Like, this could be a real playoff team next year pretty quickly, honestly, if they can hit on some picks on the defensive side of the ball. But then the Atlanta Falcons at number 23, and just what a waste of time this season has been from the Falcons. And this really goes back to when they took Desmond Ridder. I kind of called this out to happen 2 years ago. When they took him, I was like, look, they're going to talk themselves into him in year 2. He's not going to start right away in his rookie year because he's a third-round pick. And then he's going to get in there and be like, Desmond Ridder. And they're going to be sitting there in 3 years looking for a quarterback. And that's exactly where the Falcons are at. The defense is this collection of veteran pieces that one week maybe will show up a little bit, the next week they won't. The Falcons are in a weird spot right now. And maybe they'll go and get Justin Fields, who just carved them up, and maybe things turn around for them. But they have got to find some answers at that quarterback position. It starts there. Let's climb up to our next tier, though. These are the middle-of-the-road football teams. The Minnesota Vikings are going to come in at number 22. The Bengals at number 21. Just, two good teams who lost their quarterbacks, who are running out of gas. I mean, there's not much really left to say there. Really devastating in terms of the Bengals, who I think with Joe Burrow are probably towards the top of the AFC this year. So it's a really tough pill to swallow. As for the Vikes, we'll see where they go. Kirk Cousins taking his shirt off, banging the drum before the game. I feel like he wants to be back, and I feel like this team could be a playoff team with Kirk next year. So we'll see where that goes. But then the Raiders at number 20. They beat the Chiefs 2 weeks ago. As I said, these are two-week reactions, so they're going to go up +3. I think that win probably secured the thought that Antonio Pierce is going to be back, but you also don't want to lose Patrick Graham and what he's doing for that defense. Don't forget about what Patrick Graham did for the Giants several years ago, and I thought that was a steal of a hire when they got him, when McDaniels came in. So good to see him thriving as well. I don't think you want to shake that up. That defense has really impressed me. Offensively, O'Connell's probably their starter next year until they find a better long-term answer. But, the Raiders are fun. They're fun. But let's move on. The New Orleans Saints at number 19. Obviously a big win this week. where they go beat Tampa Bay, probably their most complete team win on the season. But unfortunately, it looks like it's probably going to be too little, too late. They're still behind the Bucs, who just need to beat the Panthers this week to secure the NFC South. And again, 2-week power rankings. Go back a week ago, this team had a huge game against the Rams and completely shit the bed. So it's just been exactly what you might have feared when this team signed Derek Carr. But then I am going to have those Bucs right here ahead of the Saints. And I know head-to-head, Saints just won all that. But you look at their breadth of work in recent weeks, and the Bucs have certainly been more impressive than the Saints. I already mentioned the Saints went and got destroyed by those Rams. But the Bucs offense was really coming alive and then just kind of completely hit a roadblock this week. So, you make of that as you will. The recency bias, sure, you'd put the Saints over the Bucs, but the Bucs, with what they've done, and just a week ago, a really impressive offensive performance against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense that I think is a pretty good unit, in all honesty. You look at that as a part of the picture here. The fact that they are in a win-and-in situation now against the Panthers to win the NFC South, I think you can still make a very strong argument that the Bucs should be ahead of the Saints as they are in their divisional standings. But obviously a disappointing outing where they could have just taken care of business this week, kept things rolling, and that wasn't the case. You go back to being worried about this offense and Baker Mayfield and providing a lot of questions for where the Bucs are at now and for the future. But then we have the Seattle Seahawks at number 17, who, I don't think there's a team that had a worse week in terms of expectations. Coming off that win against the Eagles a couple weeks ago, they scraped by against the Titans last week and then come home and lose to the Steelers and really cap off what's been a disappointing season. This team had big expectations. You remember they traded their second-round pick for Leonard Williams, thinking that was going to be a move that got them over the hump to compete with the Niners. Forget about that, man. This team's not even really going to make the playoffs. And this loss right here was, it captured a lot of the reasons why. You look at the defense, this team has as big of a defensive coordinator problem as any team outside of Green Bay, in my opinion. Clint Hurt has done a really bad job with this unit, and that ties back to Pete Carroll as well, who is supposed to be overall a defensive mind, has not been able to get this defense right since, basically the Legion of Boom. But you also have them punting on 4th and 1 early in this game at midfield, very much kind of a Pete Carrollism there. And then, look, I'm not going to put this loss on Geno Smith, but he certainly didn't help. And I think you have questions about if he's the future there. He's had overall a pretty good season. I think he's a good quarterback. But in this game, he overthrows an out route on a huge 3rd and 4 late in this game that kills a drive. He's got the strip sack fumble that I think is in part on Geno Smith. So just a really unfortunate season for the Seahawks, kind of coming to a close here this week. And I think this loss really is going to force this organization to have some tough conversations about Pete Carroll, because this was probably one of the worst coaching efforts of the season by any team, given expectations and the talent that this team has roster-wise. So -5 for Seattle this week, falling to 5-5. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers, who defeat the Seahawks this week, and Mike Tomlin keeps his record alive. This team will finish above 500 again. And they're doing a lot of good stuff, man. I mean, offensively, the run game, both Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris have been fantastic. They've gotten the best run blocking in Pittsburgh here that they've had really since Le'Veon Bell was here. Defensively, they're actually not that great. It's just the edge rush and coaching and I guess Joey Porter out there trying to do their best and make plays. But they had that massive fall in these rankings, really in mostly to do with Mitch Trubisky looking so unbelievably horrible. Mason Rudolph has stepped in and played very well, enough that they're not going to go back to Kenny Pickett here in Week 18. They're going to roll with Rudolph. See what that could get interesting this offseason, I guess. But very impressed by the Steelers' ability to round this season out, and Mike Tomlin's kind of done it again. I don't know if they'll sneak into the playoffs or how that whole picture kind of suits out for them. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. This is not a Super Bowl contender. But they've definitely gotten themselves back into, the middle of the road. But then the Indianapolis Colts holding on to the 15 spot for like the fourth week in a row. It just, feels like a very good spot. It's like the first team that isn't a top 14 playoff caliber team. And, I know Colts fans are tired of me rattling off the reasons why I don't see this as like a legitimate playoff team. Their wins lately have come against like the Titans, the Patriots, the Panthers this week against the Raiders. And, these are 2-week power rankings. They got steamrolled by the Falcons last week, right? So like this team has some issues, but they're doing a lot of things really well too. Like the offensive line's really come together. Shane Steichen is absolutely legit. Minshew's played well. I like the Colts and I'm really excited for their future outlook. But I still haven't really seen enough from them to like say this is a real playoff caliber team that could like play spoiler in the wild card round, even if they get in. And I don't know if they will get in. I'm actually going to have the Chicago Bears at number 14 here, getting a +7 this week, and just a huge tip of the cap to everything going on in Chicago. It's all been working. I think it starts with the defensive side of the ball, where Matt Eberflus has, it's just been a defensive enlightenment in year 2 for him, and that's not abnormal. I've talked about this a bunch, where a lot of defensive coordinators just need a little bit of time to get their scheme and scheme fits and, everything up to snuff. And that's exactly what's happened. The Montez Sweat trade, I know I didn't put him in my Pro Bowl ballot, Bears fans. I'm sorry. But that trade has been so fantastic. To be fair, I was one of a few people that was like, standing my ground and saying, why are people hating on this trade? It's a huge win for the Bears. That's a complete no-brainer, especially now that they've been winning games, and that second-round pick has fallen down in the draft order quite a bit. So, that's been such a great move. And then Justin Fields has been playing really well. I don't know that he's going to, be the future in Chicago. There's certainly going to be plenty of time to discuss that, but either way, Fields has played well. He just had one of his best days as a passer, throwing dimes in the snow. It's impressive, man. This team is really building some hype for next year, whether that's with Fields or not. I think it will be with Caleb Williams, and I think that's for the best for this team. Again, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that stuff in the near future, but this team reminds me a lot of last year's Lions, where they started like dog shit, finished extremely strong, fell just short of the playoffs, but in Week 18 have a chance to knock the Green Bay Packers out of the playoffs. And this Bears team, with the right offseason, could really hit the ground running next year, as we saw with Detroit this year. So they're really building some stuff up, and huge tip of the cap to the whole operation. Ryan Poles as well, the general manager, I think deserves a lot of credit too. I think he, other than the Chase Claypool move, they've really built this roster up and have made a lot of great moves. But let's get to our next tier, and this is the playoff caliber tier. These are, to me, legitimate playoff teams in any given year that maybe aren't Super Bowl contenders due to week consistency, but certainly are teams capable of playing spoiler and are not teams I would look forward to playing against in the playoffs. And that's going to start with the Green Bay Packers. And obviously, they still have a Joe Barry problem. It didn't show up this week thanks to Jaron Hall on the Vikings. And this team is capable of losing to pretty much anybody because they could give up 35 points to pretty much anybody. They literally did give up 30 points to the Carolina Panthers just a week ago, but they did win that game. And they won that game because of exactly what we saw this week against the Vikings in Minnesota, against a Brian Flores defense that has been a problem for a lot of great quarterbacks this year. Jordan Love. Hello. And look, man, I'm just going to say it. I have not seen enough ownership from all of the Jordan Love haters here. Y'all were wrong. This kid, it's not just he can play and he's a quality starter. He really is looking special. It's been 6-7 weeks of this now. Even if you factor in the early season struggles where it's his 4th, 5th, 6th career starts with the youngest offense in the NFL, literally. Even when you factor that in, I mean, Jordan Love has been pretty close to a top 10 quarterback this season. The Packers are like 5th in passing DVOA in the last 2 months. But even if you take the start of his season into account, I mean, what do you want to do? Raw stats, he's up there. He's going to throw for 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 picks, I think. The metrics love him. He's 11th in big-time throw percentage, 11th in turnover-worthy play percentage. I think he's 13th in PFF grade on the season. Or just, the eye test. Watch the Vikings game where Jordan Love is out there. It looked like he had the answer key to Brian Flores' defense that's been confusing a bunch of great quarterbacks this year. You try and blitz him, he was, picking, soft spots, getting rid of the ball quickly, playing with accuracy and efficiency, but also pushing the ball downfield, dropping dimes. I mean, the throw to Jaden Reed off his back foot over the middle of the field. Chris Collinsworth was geeking by the throw because it literally was a Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers-esque throw, showing off the arm talent. Like, he's got the pocket presence, the mobility. The kid's special, man. And, the Packers' offense is very dangerous right now. Oh, and by the way, he's out there doing this without Christian Watson, Luke Musgrave. Aaron Jones is only just getting back into the lineup. David Bakhtiari's missed the entire season. I don't know how you couldn't be impressed by at least the offensive side of the ball for Green Bay. And they have a win-and-in game against Chicago. They got to keep this thing rolling. They've had a roller coaster season. The last time we did a power rankings, we were dropping them, criticizing the defense. But they have a real chance to finish strong and be a playoff team in what was really an evaluation season to begin with. So win or lose, it's been a good year for the Packers, but really a chance to get into the dance. And I think as a team that could play spoiler, as a lot of these NFC teams, not named San Francisco, really have a lot of vulnerabilities, honestly. So Packers are very interesting. And then I've got the Jaguars at number 12. They're going to get a +1 this week. Very impressed by their ability to come out with a winning game plan this week and their defense to really bunker down after getting lit up the week before against Baker Mayfield and company. But they needed that defense against a Panthers offense that obviously has their issues, but was playing well the week before. So, just coming out, taking care of business, basically shutting out the Panthers and running the ball on the way to a victory. I think that's a big deal for them after they had been really spiraling out of control. Now you get Trevor Lawrence back. Hopefully just, a nice week of health to get him right, a chance to kind of get a win and in, get back into the playoffs. And, they are a fascinating team. I think getting Christian Kirk back could be a critical aspect for them too. I don't know what his timeline really is at this point, but anyway, the Jags had a very nice week to get things back on track here, as did the Houston Texans. I mean, I didn't really lower them with C.J. Stroud missing a couple weeks because we knew he'd kind of get back, and he came back and was just nails all game long against the Titans. Stroud looked phenomenal. I think he basically did everything he needed to honestly get his name back into the ring for Offensive Rookie of the Year, because Puka Nacua has just been really special. It's not a slight to Stroud. It's just Puka's probably going to break the all-time rookie record. So it's a tough case for Stroud, as good as he's been. But besides the point, the Texans are a playoff caliber team. Their offense is sweet. I wish they still had Tank Dell, because if they did, I think they could really be even more of a legitimate threat in the AFC. But that's a pretty big missing piece. And then, the defense was awesome this week, but it was the Titans. So, the Texans had a really nice win, and I do hope they make the playoffs because, like I said, I think they could play spoiler. I don't think they could go on a 4-week stretch of consistency to win a Super Bowl, but definitely could play spoiler. But then the Browns at number 10, and I think Browns fans will be mad at me this week, and that's fine. I was pounding the table for the Browns coming into the year, saying this could be a really special defense, and it has been. Even though somehow they have these games where they're giving up 39 points to the Colts and 20 something to the Jets. It's weird where the point totals don't end up matching how great this defense really is, because they just allow these kind of big random plays. But besides that, do I really think Joe Flacco is going to go on a Super Bowl run? No, I don't. I love what I'm seeing. He's been fantastic. I would totally bet against it, though, right? So, like, that's just where I'm at with the Browns. I'm all for them making me look stupid for putting them 10th and outside of the Super Bowl tier. But it does feel like at some point, Flacco's going to turn into 39-year-old Joe Flacco. But who knows? The dude went on a crazy run with a great defense and won a Super Bowl with the Ravens 10 years ago or whatever that was. So maybe he can do it again. I don't have at me, Browns fans. I think the Browns are awesome and really fun this year. But I just don't think the teams in front of them have done enough to lose their spot either. The Rams continue to be a powerhouse offensively. I mean, Matthew Stafford, I'm not saying Lamar shouldn't win the MVP or trying to take that away from him, but the fact that Matthew Stafford was really never even discussed in this whole MVP race is kind of insulting. And I know he missed a few games in there, and that's part of why the Rams have a couple extra losses here. But look at what this team was without Matthew Stafford, right? Like, there has been a huge drop-off there. He's been one of the most efficient, dominant quarterbacks in the NFL this year, really. And again, this week, just a huge offensive day against a good Giants defense. And they really have set themselves up now with the Niners maybe resting their starters this week to solidify a playoff spot. And I really would not want to play this Rams team. I really would not. And remember, they beat this Browns team 36-19, by the way, week 13 as a part of this run. So that's a part of why they rank ahead of the Browns. But that is going to do it for my playoff caliber tier. We are now entering the Super Bowl potential tier, teams that I think have a shot at the Super Bowl, even if they're not front runners. And the Miami Dolphins are in trouble. They're dropping down 2 here, and I even thought about saying I can't see this team winning a Super Bowl, but they still just have so much offensive potential that they could get hot and they can beat anybody. And they were out there without Jalen Waddle this week. They expect him back. But, they lose Bradley Chubb this week, now down their top 2 edge rushers. It's just when you start to compound injuries at one position like that, it's a challenge for teams to overcome. So Vic Fangio is going to have his hands full there, trying to stop the Bills this week. And it's not that they need to win this game, but getting what could be the 2 seed is a much more favorable than being a 5 seed. So big week for the Dolphins ahead. We'll see how they look against the Bills. I'm certainly not writing them off, but Tua throwing some bad picks this week certainly doesn't help the formula for them either. But I don't want to just write off the Dolphins, but I'm definitely worried, and I think Dolphins fans probably are too. Then we got the Kansas City Chiefs at number 7, taking care of business. I mean, they're kind of a run the ball, play defense team. I think they really need to just lean into Pacheco, lean into the strengths of their offense, which is going to be Pacheco, the interior of the offensive line, and then let Mahomes do his magic on third down. If they do that and they play great defense, which they're very capable of, this Chiefs team is still going to be right in there in like all of these games. It's just, they're just not a dynamic offense right now, and they're going to have to address that in the offseason, but I still think the Chiefs are a Super Bowl contender. I do. And then we got the Eagles. Man, if Kansas City didn't continue to look lackluster and the Dolphins didn't lose Bradley Chubb and got blown out by the Ravens this week, like the Eagles might be falling more than one spot here, but it wasn't a great week for a lot of these teams here. I still ultimately believe in these teams to a degree, but how can you not be worried about the Eagles, man? The drop-off in coaching, I think, is the biggest thing here. Like, dude, they really miss Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. That is very clear from this game, not just with Jonathan Gannon on the other side of the ball, who honestly I thought did a good job defensively, completely outmanned talent-wise. The Eagles also had that pick 6 where it was a miscommunication from Kyler Murray and shout out Sidney Brown, the rookie safety, who houses it for 6. But yeah, man, their defense is clearly an issue. Their cornerback room is a mess. And then just offensively, they all year have not had the same rhythm. And I said this coming into the year. I was like, look, Nick Sirianni, they couldn't get this offense going until he handed the play calling duties over to Shane Steichen in 2021. He has not been able to re-implement Steichen's offense here in a very good way. So, and yeah, like there's so much talent on this team. That talent can shine through any given week, like a week where they beat the Bills a few weeks ago, but they just are not a consistent football team and have issues in a way that you might not have really felt about them coming into the year. But with all of that said, with the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Dolphins kind of sputtering a little bit, the Detroit Lions are roaring heading into the playoffs, man. Lions fans who think I hate you, here you go. A week where you technically lost. You're getting a +3. You're going up into the Super Bowl tier. You're a top 5 team for me right now. So there you go, Lions fans. That's what it's all about. And I love seeing what they're doing here these last 3 weeks. Started with the Broncos game, but have backed it up with a great offensive performance in Minnesota to win that one. And then this week against the Cowboys, a little bit more of a balanced team performance. And, again, I don't hate the Lions. I'm giving them credit for that game, even though they technically lost. That was one of their more impressive performances of the season. I mean, they were in control of that game for a large part of it. The offense, getting Jameson Williams going. Ben Johnson just continues to be such a brilliant play caller. That is going to be a loss that they're going to have to find a way to swallow this offseason, but he's there right now. Defensively, I mean, Aiden Hutchinson really coming to life, but he had that hot start when the defense was playing great. Felt like he had tapered off a little bit. Just dominant against the Cowboys, whether it was going against Tyron Smith or Steele at right tackle, who's not been as good this year. But, if you get a pass rusher like that, making game-changing plays, we know what this offense is capable of. I think they're really roaring right now, and it's coming at a time where the Eagles are sputtering. I mean, they just showed that they can make the Cowboys look vulnerable. The Chiefs are vulnerable. The Dolphins are vulnerable. Like, the Lions are absolutely up there with these teams, I think. And I think that part of this is they've been impressive. And part of this is, I think, the top of the NFC is coming down to earth a little bit. But the biggest deal here is the Lions climbing up into this tier. I think they very much could do this thing. Like, I'm not saying they're favorites to do it or that I'd pick them to do it, but other than the Niners, I really think they are neck and neck with any team in the NFC. It's not to say I don't have worries about their defense, but I have worries about aspects of really all these teams in these tiers. So big week for Detroit, big couple of weeks for Detroit. And I'm sorry, Lions fans, you guys kind of got jobbed at the end of that game. Ultimately, I don't think it really mattered. You looked good in the game, and I don't think they were going to get the 1 seed anyway, so it ultimately doesn't make a huge difference, I don't think. But anyway, big week for Detroit. Top 5 for the Lions. First time ever, for sure, on my channel at least. Then we got the Buffalo Bills at number 4. Honestly, kind of a sloppy game against the Patriots. They were gifted turnovers earlier in that game, and still just not a really dominant performance. I think, Josh Allen was kind of playing with his food a little bit this week, just kind of going back to the whole headhunting Josh Allen, not taking what's underneath, and they kind of got back to the run game in the second half and made things work against a bad Patriots team. Kind of is what it is. They got the win. That's all that matters. They've had some very impressive wins on this stretch, right? Chiefs hanging against the Eagles, Cowboys where they were dominant. This team is, at the end of the day, I think getting hot and healthy at the right time. I mean the Rasul Douglas trade, I think, saved that defense on the back end. And I would expect them to be favorites against the Dolphins this week. And, that would put them at probably the 2 seed, and they're kind of right back to where their preseason expectations were. The Bills are very dangerous right now, for sure. And then they got the Cowboys at number 3. And, they pick up a win again. They didn't just pick up a win. They beat Detroit. Again, I think that was a good head-to-head battle between 2 Super Bowl contenders. Whatever happened as an end result doesn't really matter to me. I thought Dak looked great. I think CeeDee Lamb, I dropped my wide receiver tier maker video and did not have him in the top of top tiers. in the league, and I think this game would change my opinion on that. I would say he belongs in that top tier as in my opinion, the fourth best wide receiver in the NFL. What a performance by him. But yeah, I think I don't feel any differently about the Cowboys this week as I did last week. I still think they're the most complete team in this tier and the closest team to our top tier here. But they still have that kind of lingering feeling of like, are you going to get those stinker weeks from them, like they had against Buffalo, like they've had throughout the Mike McCarthy era. So it's something to be on the back of your mind. But I think Dallas looks really good. And then we have our Super Bowl favorites tier. Very obvious rankings here. We got the Niners at 2 and the Ravens at number 1. The Ravens took this spot 2 weeks ago when they stomped the Niners. They stomped them. I mean, what a win that was. And then they come out and do what they did to the Dolphins. I mean, talk about getting hot and healthy at the right time. The Ravens look absolutely unstoppable. And I think that Monday night game from the Ravens against the Niners was much more about them announcing that they are a tier 1 team. They belong up here with the Niners and above the Niners. And less so of I'm worried about the Niners, they're not a Super Bowl front runner type of deal. Like, you go to that game, I will say, like, there was some bad turnover luck, some deflections that got intercepted. Brock Purdy did not have a good game, obviously, and I think you might have some growing concerns about, like, if this team does fall behind, can they come from behind, be a drop-back passing team? I still think they can when push comes to shove, but it's something to be a little bit worried about. But again, this was much more about the Ravens making a statement. And then the Ravens come out and do what they did to the Dolphins, which was just so impressive. I mean, I've bet against the Ravens the last 2 weeks, and I've literally paid for it. And it's hurt my wallet, but I have no hard feelings about it. I'm really happy for the Ravens. I've been really praising their front office and their drafts for years, and there hasn't been a whole lot to show for it, but it's all really coming together at the right time. I mean, these two teams definitely feel like they're heading towards a rematch. I think they are the clear-cut best two teams in their respective conferences, and not a whole lot to really debate, I think, at the top of the rankings here as well. But that's going to do it for our final power rankings of the season. So definitely let me know your comments down below, where you agree, where you disagree, what rankings would you change. Again, make sure you subscribe. We got lots of great content heading your way. Draft season is upon us here, so that's always, I think, the best time of the year on the channel. And thank you for watching. We'll see you later. Peace out.